Hello everyone, I'm Michael, and today, I'm going to tell you a story. What hasn't been the same since the pandemic? Story 1. We were just at a Thai restaurant and halfway through my meal a clump of red pepper flakes got stuck in my throat, and I started coughing, trying to clear my throat, and chugging water. I honestly thought I was going to vomit. It was hurting so bad. The waitress came by and said we do not allow people to cough in here. If you cannot stop immediately, then you must leave now. When I could not physically stop clearing my throat because of the pain, she walked us out. It was so frustrating. We are super regulars, and the manager was like, sorry, it is just our rules. This meal is on me since you have to leave. See you this weekend. They won't ever see us again, but at least our last meal there was free. Story 2. I bought a car this year, and they told me they only have one key. I said, that's fine, make another. They told me it's $250. I said, okay then. See you later. I'm not buying a car with one key. This is like after the paperwork, and everything is signed, and they were like, you've signed everything, reminded them of the cooling off laws and having 3 days to cancel the transaction, and I wouldn't need 3 days. We can just cancel it now. All of a sudden, they were able to have a mobile tech out at my house the same day. Story 3. Driving. I swear people became worse drivers, erratic even. People are much squirrelier and much quicker to anger. Everyone around me seems like they are on the edge and primed for confrontation. Little things that would have rolled off our backs previously now turn into big things. I think we are all traumatized. I don't know if it's pandemic related, but in my city it seems law enforcement has given up on enforcing fundamentals. Flagrant red light running, speeding, tailgating, you name it. We've even turned into a little Baltimore with all the roving gangs of dirt bikes and quads on the streets. Story 4. My trust that I can rely on any one product to be available. I couldn't buy plain raw chicken when our vet recommended it in 2020. We couldn't find a good used car when we grew our family in 2021. The formula shortage scared me into being really good at breastfeeding my 2022 baby. Need a certain medication. It may not be available. Want to sanitize your home during a pandemic? Good luck finding anything in the stores. I don't take for granted things being readily available anymore, nor do I expect it. Story 5. The QR code menu thing would work better if restaurants would take the time to optimize menu for mobile too. Most of the time, it links you to a PDF file that generally has to be downloaded, and then the file is what the menu would be if they had printed it off. So you need to constantly zoom in and out and scroll across and up and down just to read it. Other times, it sends you to the webpage version of the menu, only the site wasn't optimized for mobile, and all the formatting is off and words are cut off, so it's just as frustrating to navigate. Please, if you insist on the QR code menu, at least have a menu that is usable on a cell phone. I don't think that is asking too much. Story 6. The idea that people are more productive in an office. For the better, COVID showed that some people can work more efficiently from home remotely, and I am grateful for this change. Before the pandemic started, Canada disliked the idea of working from home, as I always thought to not mix personal with professional, sort to say. But when the pandemic hit, I didn't have a choice but to work from home, and now I'm loving it. I can do so much work while at home than when I'm in the office. Still going to the office 2 to 3x a week to see my colleagues, and for a change. After 2+ years of working mostly from home, I cannot see myself going back to the office full time. I'm not sure why this wasn't obvious to people, and it took actually experiencing it for them to see. Hear this a lot from management and coworkers. No commute, no office chit-chat, less time spent on lunch. See, no office chit-chat. Actually, way much more time for productivity since all the office stuff is cut out. I was doing hybrid for a while, but I'm heavily favoring the remote aspect now that I got a better setup at home. I'm more productive, and a lot less time and stress wasted with commuting. Story 7. Christmas just doesn't feel the same anymore. 2020 Christmas still had that feeling of magic during the horrible times vibe. But now, it just doesn't feel the same anymore. This one definitely tops my list. This year absolutely did not feel festive or Christmassy at all. I even thought once I decorated and put my tree up the vibe would set in. Nope. I think part of it is the intense commercialization lately. Black Friday was all November long. It's always been commercialized, but now it's lacking the magic and getting worse. Story 8. Everyone's saying no one wants to work anymore. It's truly irritating. Most of us have been overworked and underpaid for years. There definitely was a shift, but the slogan should be no one wants to be exploited anymore. This is how I feel. I've been working my ass off at a small non-profit for years. We won awards and everything. I had a kid. Few months later, the pandemic started, and working from home, I saw a different side to the MD. 2 years later, I have another kid and my work ethic for the company is actual abysmal through genuine resentment. I've been open with them about my mental health and how much I believe I was overworked before the pandemic. It all stems from people working over their hours. When I stopped that the second I had kids, the second I'm off the clock, is their time now. Story 9. People lost a degree of civilization. Outbreaks of violence, verbal or physical, seem to happen much more easily and faster than before. People wear masks, or should wear masks, anytime they're sick. It's common sense in all Asia. That should one good thing COVID brought us. People are less social. It used to be that only loners get to peel only when needed. It's like many more discovered they could spare the effort. Remote work boomed. Story 10. Weird mixed match of symptoms in illnesses and sicknesses I've experienced. Like a lot of people, I went about a year and a half during the pandemic where I didn't get a cold or anything like that. The few times I got sick since then has been weird. I'll get really bad sniffles and congestion issues, but body aches. Or I'll get weird body aches and digestive issues, but no congestion or coughing and sneezing. Recently, I had a strong sore throat, but nothing else. When I used to get colds, it was the full Monty, all the symptoms crashing through the door at once. It's like after COVID the other illnesses lost their way a bit, when they saw they couldn't live up to what COVID was doing worldwide. Story 11. Apart from people's general behaviors and driving habits, and continual supply chain and inflation issues like everyone's mentioned here, I'd say the state of healthcare. The system is still strained due to a large population ill with COVID, and healthcare staffing, while always strained, has reached a crisis point. The pediatric healthcare system has never seen such levels of demand. There are a couple of theories as to why, including long-term weakening of immune systems. But the bottom line is, it's something our generation, at least in North America, have never seen. It doesn't feel like the pandemic is over. Instead, we're operating in constant crisis mode. It's exhausting, and everyone I know who works in healthcare has been feeling it for 3 years now. Story 12. My communication skills. I've grown so emotionally tired that my once personality of replying back to everyone within a day now rests with 100 plus pending chats, and I've lost connections with once close friends because I wouldn't reply, and we wouldn't hang out because of the lockdown. Plus, weirdly, I remember everything about 2020, but almost nothing about 2021, and it's so weird. The only thing I remember is having a piercing and getting into college. I used to blame myself because I thought I was getting lazy with not replying to people, but I realized it's nothing like that. There are some things that I don't enjoy as much as I used to. Times have changed and so have the people around me. I still feel guilty, but I try and tell myself that it's not my fault, just the time. Story 13. When the pandemic started, I realized early 2020 that this is not going to work out and quit my job and use the time to work on my career instead of focusing on the lockdown. It really feels like someone stole 3 years of my life somehow. It was really hard to archive anything while the world is in a pause mode. I'm really feeling sorry for all the teenagers who didn't have the chance to live free and without restriction. I really hope we learn from our mistakes and turn our world into good and long term. For me, I learned to use any situations to challenge yourself and take advantage. What really shocked me during the pandemic was that I lost trust on many friends in how they acted, and I really cut them out. It's like people showed their real face during the hard times. Story 14. My perception of time. 2020 and 2021 feel, simultaneously, as if they went forever, but also sped past. Our oldest, the one that was 19, dropped out of college this past summer of 2022 because the program he was in had changed so much that a required class was not being offered anymore. And none of his friends went back to campus when it reopened in 2021. I think he's depressed, but he refuses to talk to a professional about it. Our second oldest, the one that was 17, was class of 2020. She missed the most graduation, senior prom, a class trip to Italy that had been scheduled for mid-March 2020, which she paid for by herself. There was a week or so we weren't sure we were even going to get our money back. We eventually got all but about $75 back. Her very small, private high school offered her class a token appreciation at an event in 2021, but none of her classmates participated. She started college on a campus that admirably was determined and kept students in person, but the trade-off was that there were no in-person extracurriculars or clubs. The dining hall was takeout or limited, 2 to 3 to a table her whole first year, and there was a no-guest policy in the residence hall rooms. She had such a hard time meeting people, and no longer speaks to her roommate from that year. She started seeing a therapist in 2020 and is still on medication for anxiety. Kid number 3, who was 15, had the driver's ed class he started in February 2020 canceled after 2 sessions. Because of the backlog and a shortage of instructors, he didn't get his license until earlier this year. His high school was online for 3 quarters in the 2020 to 21 school year, and there were many days where I could not even wake him up. He was severely depressed and borderline suicidal and is still seeing a therapist and on medication for anxiety and depression. My youngest, who was 13, has come out the least affected of my 4, but she missed a lot too. She was able to stay in in-person contact with her best friend through the whole safer at home phase. We found out in spring 2021 that the best friend had been so lonely that she was being groomed and sexually abused by an older boy from school. The best friend ran away from home after telling everyone that she was coming over to our house. The police came and searched our house for her. She thankfully turned up safe the next day, but my daughter isn't close to her anymore. Story 15. 2020 and 2021 both felt like the longest and shortest years of my life at the same time. I could barely even tell them apart, since barely anything remarkable happened in those years, aside from the lockdowns, COVID cases, and deaths, of course. At the very least, 2022 felt like things were finally starting to return to normal, despite the huge Omicron surge here in my country back in January. COVID restrictions here were finally eased after being in lockdown mode for over 2 years. Schools were reopened in August after being shut down for more than 2 years. People could go to sporting events and concerts. Again, they weren't allowed until around March or April. Mask mandates were lifted, though. They're still required on public transit and healthcare facilities, and we don't have to scan QR codes everywhere anymore. My family even got to travel abroad for the first time since the lockdowns. Story 16. The price of groceries. A regular weekly shop now costs me double what it did pre-pandemic, and there's no signs of things returning to a decent price anytime soon. Not to mention the inconsistency with prices. I go to several different grocery stores now, depending on what I need. Chicken at my main grocery store is $20 for 3 pounds, while at another grocery store 3 pounds of chicken is $9. Price gouging at its finest. Some items haven't had major increases yet, so I've found myself buying a few fancier ingredients regularly since it's like one more to get the high-end version. But other times, the name brand chips are 3x as expensive as the store brand. The prices are wild right now. Story 17. Weird mix match of symptoms in illnesses and sicknesses I've experienced. Like a lot of people, I went about a year and a half during the pandemic where I didn't get a cold or anything like that. The few times I got sick since then has been weird. I'll get really bad sniffles and congestion issues, but body aches. Or I'll get weird body aches and digestive issues, but no congestion or coughing and sneezing. Recently, I had a strong sore throat, but nothing else. When I used to get colds, it was the full Monty, all the symptoms crashing through the door at once. It's like after COVID the other illnesses lost their way a bit, when they saw they couldn't live up to what COVID was doing worldwide. Both my 2 bosses are vaccinated and boosted, but one has a ton of health issues and their immune system is shot. Got COVID like 4 times. The other is just getting old, so when they get sick, it knocks them out for several weeks. Both seem to keep getting stay in bed for 2 weeks sick a couple times a year lately. My coworker supervisor has gotten sick here, and there over the last few years too. I only got COVID the first time this year. It's like everyone keeps getting sick and passing it around to each other except for me and another coworker. I did get a stomach bug a couple weeks ago though. Exhausted, threw up once, and had a low-grade fever overnight. Gone the next morning. Before I actually got COVID one time, I could feel my throat getting sore and I was exhausted. It happened to be over the weekend, so I just slept a lot. Each time I woke up, I could feel the progression, and it was improving, so I'd tell myself, I'm not really sick. It'll run. Its course begun soon, and I'd go back to sleep, trying to will it away with brain power. Haha, and the next day, it was gone. I've always had a good immune system, but I definitely feel like it got stronger. Though, that could simply be because of my work environment. Story 18. Everyone's saying no one wants to work anymore. It's truly irritating. Most of us have been overworked and underpaid for years. There definitely was a shift, but the slogan should be no one wants to be exploited anymore. This is how I feel. I've been working my ass off at a small non-profit for years. We won awards and everything. I had a kid. Few months later, the pandemic started, and working from home, I saw a different side to the MD. 2 years later, I have another kid, and my work ethic for the company is actually abysmal through genuine resentment. I've been open with them about my mental health and how much I believe I was overworked before the pandemic. It all stems from people working over their hours. When I stopped that the second I had kids, the second I'm off the clock is their time now. Luckily, I've found a new job and will be handing my resignation in on Monday.